You get plenty of coverage of Oklahoma State football. You think you hear all the noise coming from Gallagher-Iba Arena when you get your Cowboy basketball news. But you don't.
You just don't get it, do you? You don't.
And there's a couple of Jordans here to fix just that. This is the Cowgirl Coverage Podcast.
This could be a podcast. Anyone with a computer can make one.
Here are your hosts, Jordan Keene and Jordan Bishop.
That's correct. Welcome into the Cowgirl Coverage Podcast. Jordan King, Jordan Bishop with you. Per usual, stick around. This is a great interview, one that I think turned out all right. Sounds all right, at least from my perspective. So hopefully it sounds good coming through your earbuds as well. It is Michele Smith, ESPN broadcaster, multi-time, seven-time gold medalist in different gold medal situations.
Yeah.
A couple of Olympic medals, Olympic starting pitcher. Michele Smith, former Cowgirl, All-American, Hall of Famer, and you got to interview her.
Yeah, and I am very happy that it is working because my $40 recorder I bought like 4 years ago
man.
still works.
Magic.
It shows that it works on this. I thought it was really cool because I wanted, ever since I knew she was coming to town, because usually what happens with these ESPN crews is that they'll do like a remote broadcast.
Seeing that
so
a
actually
lot.
seeing that she was here, I thought it was really cool. As soon as I heard that, I really want to talk to her. I was like, man, when am I going to get the chance? And all of a sudden, I think you gave me a nudge in the first game on Friday night. Like, hey, she's in the
We were
box.
in the midst of a legend. That's what.
So I was like, you know what? I'm waiting till after the game. She was taking notes. I was like, I can go ask her, and she said yes. I don't know why, but I'm very happy she did. And I talked to her Saturday. She was in there to watch Cowgirl batting practice around 2. And talked to her a bit during that. I thought it was really cool to hear because we talk a lot about on this podcast of the growth of the women's game and looking forward to the future and how it is. Michele Smith is the reason,
Heck yeah.
For growing of softball as the ESPN broadcaster, for getting these more recognition. She's obviously been an advocate for this game and ambassador for the game globally, and getting it back in the Olympics. And sadly, as soon as it's back in, we'll learn that he'd take it back for 2024, but hopefully it comes back in 28. But she's been a great, every time I say Ricky Fowler is a great advocate for Oklahoma State University.
Yeah.
Michele Smith is a great advocate for Oklahoma State University, and what
For the
she's
entire
done,
country, really.
Yeah, and what she's done for this sport is incredible, and I'm glad that we get to have some time with her, and it's a very cool interview. So
Yeah, great ambassador for the sport. And I guess as long as she's allowing us to use her interview with her, we can plug her. One of the things outside of just broadcasting that she's done, and I know she made a fan out of you. You're a frequent listener now.
Yeah. So listening to it, the 7 Innings podcast on ESPN with Beth Mullins, Amanda Scarborough, Holly Rowe, and they go through everything. I mean, they go through 7 innings, as the name says. They start off with a topic for each inning. She has her shagging stats at the end for players who are making some good plays, and Riley Bayless is up there. And obviously that was before last week whenever she was on Sports Center for the Wichita State game, and then had the game of her life on Saturday. That was before that. But they give some recognition, and I think not to discredit us, Jordan, but they're doing it at another level. I mean, obviously they've been doing it for years, and it's a really good podcast to listen to. So
there's no doubt about it, and I have no problem saying that. They don't. They've got a few more connections to us. But, hey, you know what? We continue to grind. The Cowgirl Coverage Podcast is going to get there. Believe you me. There's no doubt about it. So, again, all softball, all episode long. Before we get to that Michele Smith interview, we're going to break it down, review, preview. So before we get to it, let's review what we just had. A huge week for the Cowgirls. A reason that they are moving up in the RPI. Continue to it's a slow climb right now, but it is a climb up there in the RPI and a climb in both of the polls as well. We'll show the RPI coming up in just a second, but I want to talk about the week that was. We still got instant reaction from Wichita State last week's podcast, but you get that 9-6 win. It just kind of spurs you forward. You had a great weekend against Texas. It cannot be overstated how good a weekend it was. And again, I want to play some sound here. We're going to play some sound throughout this review because we were both there all 3 days, and we got some good quotes from all 3 days. So I want to play back-to-back here. We'll just make it all one, make it easy on everyone. Sydney Pennington and Kenny Gajewski. And the question I kind of posed to both of them was, like, how do you balance losing this final game with winning the series? Here's what they had to say.
Good weekend. Got to win series in this conference. That's the bottom line. You got to sweep some, too, if you have any hopes of finishing in the, in the top two. So we just got to get out this week, keep getting better. I saw some really good things all weekend long. But we just got to continue to fight and just keep winning games.
Yeah, like Coach G said, losing today kind of made it feel like we kind of forgot about the other two games. So we have to just remember, in the back of our heads that we won the series and we played two great games. And this was a great game, too. We fell a little short. So, just keeping that in the, back of our head, knowing that we won the series.
So the thing that I thought was interesting about this, Jordan, was because, like they said, it's tough. You feel like you lost the series. You feel like you lost all three games. Like, that can creep into your mind when you lose the final game of the series because recency bias, everyone has it.
Yeah.
But you were at Media Day, and the vibe changes just after a couple days.
Yeah, and like Coach Gaxley said there, after you have a day to think about it and see the standings and see where you are, you start to reflect on, hey, this actually was a good weekend for us. And it was. Is in many ways more than one. Like we said, previewing Texas, it's on national TV. Going against a team that many expect to be in the World Series in Texas. And, it's a time for you to showcase what kind of team you are in front of an audience that might not know about you. And now they did. And you win that series. You won the second game handily in a run rule.
Yeah. First run rule under Mike White, I believe.
Wow. So, yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
And I think that's great, and that's what you're looking back on Tuesday when I talked to them. They realized they had a good weekend. That they do wish they had the sweep because we do talk about they have 2 losses in the Big 12 now. They have to basically sweep all the rest of the series and then hope to get a sweep of Oklahoma if Oklahoma doesn't drop any games.
Right.
Now, if OU drops one down the road, maybe to Texas here in the next coming weeks, then you can get a series and win against OU, and then you end up having a tiebreaker and winning the Big 12, which would be phenomenal.
Yeah.
But you have to realize that, hey, a sweep would be nice, but you'd seriously be a top 10 team in Texas, and you moved up to number 13 in the RPI.
Yeah, it's one of those where, is this where you want to be someday? You want to be pushing yourself to actually sweep Texas? Yeah, there's no doubt about it. But where this program is, you kind of have to self-audit yourself and look at it and say, you know what? This is a hell of a weekend. And some huge performances from a lot of people. I want to talk about Friday night, first of all, because this was so much fun. I mean, the pitching duel was phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I pulled out from the post game was Samantha Shao talking about how she likes to share the circle with someone as accomplished, someone as competitive as Miranda Ellish. Here's that.
It's really cool to share rubber. I've known her since her time at Oregon, and just the control she has and the command and the energy that she brings. It's really cool to see that, and it makes me want to do better. It makes me want to do more. I want to be better than her. It was really great energy in the circle, and it was a pitching duel, and we just came out on top. So
again, man, I love a good old-fashioned dogfight,
yeah.
And that's what that was. I mean, that was a battle of heavyweights. The last game was too. I mean, that was the way I kind of phrased it to myself was this is a heavyweight fight with Samantha Shao and Miranda Ellish. Both hit home runs off of each other on Sunday. Both pitched extremely well on Sunday. And both were awesome on Friday night in a 1-0 walk-off win for the Cowgirls.
Yeah. And Miranda Ellish, and like Coach Grassy said, she was coming out there Sunday with something to prove. She didn't really need something to prove, but she was coming out there with something to prove. She was throwing straight fire from the beginning on Sunday, and then they started getting hits off for Sydney Pennington led the charge, which we talked about how that's helping her out. Her average is starting to climb up a bit, and something that she didn't really have last year around this time of the season. But the thing I liked about her with Sam Shaw saying that is, it does show that she is the competitor. Everybody talks about how she's a bulldog, she's a competitor, and you're like, yeah, people say that all the time, but she is, and she does raise her level to the team, into the pitcher that she's playing. And Miranda Ellish, she's a heck of a pitcher. So Sam Shaw, if she plays against those arms, and even Coach said that, starting to hit off elite arms, Sam Shaw's leading that charge, and that's the difference between a regional team and a super regional team.
Yeah, we're following along live right now with this UT-Arlington game. Only 1 run on the board for the Cowgirls. Bats kind of went silent again here tonight so far. Now that I say that, hopefully they wake up. But the only 1 run Samantha Schau home runs. She leads the team with 11 of them now. So she's been tremendous both in the circle and in the batter's box. Winning that game was Michele Richburg. Going into her at bat, you kind of asked her, what was the approach? What was going through your mind? Here's what she had to say.
So we've been working a lot this past week, the week before, staying on top of the ball and no more fly ball outs. And so I've been working a lot on that every day. And so what we've been doing in BP is just stay on top of the ball. And Coach G came up to me and was just like, it's just like batting practice. Choke up on the bat a little bit if you have to and stay on top of the ball. And they were like telling me Taylor got walked for a reason, that they have no faith in me, but my team said they had my back and they had all the faith in the world in me.
Couldn't have said it any better. That's exactly what happened, right? She felt disrespected, or that's what her players said. Look, they're disrespecting you. What a way to respond.
Yeah, and she's moving up on my list. I know I have a long list of features need to get done, pretty much every on this team. But she's moving up on there really rapidly because last year she didn't get much playing time. This year she's learning on the fly, like Coach says, at first base and the outfield. And she's doing well, and she is second on the team in home runs with tie with Cheyenne Factor, who's another young player who's doing well. And the thing is that Coach said on Tuesday, she's a player that no one really wanted. I mean, looking at March Madness right now in the Final Four, we talked about Jarrett Culver as somebody nobody really wanted for Texas Tech.
Stayed at home.
Michele Richburg stayed at home. Her home state comes from Broken Bow down the southeast corner of the state. No one really wanted her. And look at her now. She's proven people wrong, and she proved the entire state of Texas wrong on Friday night when she goes up there. And they load the base with Taylor Lynch. She said, you know what, we're not going to let the senior beat us with Taylor Lynch. We're going to put the ball into the end, and we're going to give it to the girl who's hitting, I think, around 350 right now the past 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And we said 8 home runs. We're going to try to let her beat us, and she did. So
absolutely, she did. I want to one other bit of audio here from this first game that I wanted to play. Coach Gajewski talks about this. He looked at you right in the eye, and he said, look, you've been covering us for 4 years. You've seen it. This was probably a little lucky, but we kind of deserve it. Let me just play it. He says it better than I do.
It's set up for us just right. And it's kind of lucky, but listen, you've watched us play here for 4 years now, and we've had our share of bad luck and balls hit right at people and the wrong spot at the right time. So we've turned the tides here some.
I thought that was a masterful quote from Coach Gajewski because, like he said, it seems like in the past they'd just kind of been waiting for when is it going to happen. Mm-hmm. We know something's wrong is going to happen against a top 10 team. Just when. Now it's like, okay, we know the floodgates are going to open for it. Like Sunday, right? Like when Texas scored those first 2 runs, it was like, that sucks. They get 2 early runs, but like, is this game over? No, I don't think it's over by any means. And it was just like you're waiting for it, kind of anticipation for something good to happen, which is kind of a change of pace a little bit for this program.
Yeah, it's not just a softball program. It's, Oklahoma State fans in general. You kind of feel like the universe is against you based on everything that happens. Every single time it seems you're on that edge. You're about this close to getting a program-defining win, and something happens. Something miraculous happens for the other team, and you end up losing.
Yeah.
Brian Phillips for Grantland did a great piece a couple years ago on Squinky. You call it. That's the thing. Squinky, he's the one that intercepts the pass, from Mike Gundy that you don't beat OU. He's the one that, blocks a shot, against Georgia Tech in the Final Four. He's that person. And for a long time, it felt like that with Coach G and these girls, and that every time they get in these situations. Last year, for example, you're down in Wichita State. I think you're down 1. I think bases are loaded, 2 outs. Taylor Lynch walks up to the plate. Time to go advance your season. You have not beat Wichita State all year long, but you have the momentum. It's bottom of the 7th. You have a chance, and she flies right out to right field, and she pops it out. And it feels like that's what was going to happen. Oh no, bases loaded. I think there were no outs on Friday night. You're like,
somehow there's going to be a double play, or a fluke triple play, even.
Yeah, and that was going to be it. No, and I think we talked about this last week, and Kylie Naomi mentioned it again on Tuesday. This goes back to the feeling that be the hammer, not be the nail. All those years, they're waiting for, oh, no, something's going to happen. We just have hope we're lucky, and then we can get out of this.
Yeah.
Not this time. They're the aggressors. They're going in there with, like, I'm going to hit this ball. It's going to go where I want it to, and I'm going to get this run in and win this game. And that's the mindset you have to have. And that's the mindset that it's been building, and he talked about that. It comes back on this foundation of there's a lot of those year 1 players there. Tiffany Mickelson was there the other night that – they had to change a lot of things. And I remember back in the first year, there was a moment. Their record was I think 16-17. there was a moment that they hadn't changed their mentality. They barely ended up scraping an NCAA tournament. I think they took Georgia to the final day of the regional, and they've been fighting ever since. Now they're getting to the point where they're starting to be the aggressor, making those plays. And it's true. It feels like luck, but once you working hard enough at it for a long time, those plays go your way.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. So a big win on Friday night. How do you follow that up? How are you able to do you go a shell of yourself? What is the response? Huge response. And carved out some runs, scraped some runs across the next morning, a couple bunts, or next night, pardon me, not next night. Normally it's an afternoon or morning game, but this was a 7:30 p.m. start time to cooperate with ESPN. So no problems there. But you scrape a couple runs across at the start, a couple power hitters bunting, talking Sam Shaw and Maddie Sue Montgomery, bunting people over, getting some runs in. You get 2 early runs. And inexplicably, in my opinion, Coach White pulls out stud, phenom, freshman pitcher O'Leary in the second inning after just 1.1 innings of work. So I thought that was interesting. I didn't agree with it at the time. Obviously, hindsight agreed with me because the very next player,
Brooke Bollinger,
mm-hmm. There was a bat flip from Riley Bayless. Here's Riley Bayless talking about the bat flip.
I mean, I always have my mental images, and I told her because she told me that, and I was just like, I never have those home runs that are just like moonshots. Like they're usually like line drives, like kind of like that last hit, and like when it was a hit and run, he had a hit and run on, and so I just like, all right, well I guess I'll just swing at this, and then I was like, oh my god, this is like up in the lights, and I was just like, oh god, this is my time, like it's time to do it. And so I chucked that thing, and then I set it in the deuces, and then horns down. It was like a video, like a dream I had when I fell asleep. So I was really excited. I finally got that big hit where I was confident that it was out.
Dude, that was awesome.
Yeah.
that was the funnest interview. You told me, you're like, dude, get ready. This is your first Riley Bayless interview. And she did not disappoint by any means. And she laid it out there, man. It was finally a moonshot. She finally got it to go. And she wasted no time throwing that bat about 10 feet in the air.
Yeah, she tattooed that light pole.
Yeah.
She knew as soon as it was gone. It was cool seeing on the night sky, seeing that ball
just
go. And what was cool was the next at bat, Sam Shaw does the exact same thing. Well, she's a bat flip. She's already done that. But she goes up there, hits it the same exact place for a solo shot. That's what's funny was Riley talked about after this was she had gotten the home run chain. You know, she was feeling great in the dugout. And all of a sudden, she just hear. She said she didn't.
She didn't see it.
She heard it coming off the bat from Sam, and she knew that it was gone. And she said she almost blacked out from how excited she was. And you know that was just the night it was. And like we said a while ago, teams who do that and come out the aggressor, if you do that, this stuff happens. You know? It was awesome.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. She was just a ball of fire in the post-game interview. She had a game of her life, 3 for 3, 3 RBIs. She scored every time she was on base, besides the final time, which she couldn't score because she walked off the game. So they end up run ruling them for, I believe, as I read, the first time in Mike White's Texas career. First year there, but nonetheless, still a big win there for the Oklahoma State Cowgirls. Here's Coach Kenny Gajewski. I wanted to mention this because I think he made a point, kind of went out of his way to talk about the emotion, the energy that the crowd, it was a great crowd all weekend long, kind of gave to his team. Here's Coach.
We haven't had a chance to feed off of energy yet. Now, this is the first really, we played at home early, but the crowds were sparse. It was freezing cold. Now, all of a sudden, we got energy here in the stadium like we know we had in the past, and I knew it was going to be awesome, and it has been, but that's what this place is. That's why I'm here. I love this place. I love what our people do, and the people who support us, our alumni group that we have that's back here tonight, from years before me, way before me, to our kids that we coached in our first year here, to see all these kids back. Team 1's right over here. Thanks, guys. To have all these guys back here, I mean, I'm as happy for them as I am for these kids, because that first group had to endure some tough days and to get this thing on the right path, and they were all in to make it happen. But it's just cool to watch them enjoy this too.
yeah, I think he brings up a good point. He talked about honoring the old team that played. You talked about that earlier, but just the energy that Cowgirl Stadium can bring when it's really rolling.
Yeah, and the first couple of games, like you mentioned back in March for their Invitational, freezing cold. There's like maybe 200 people there. This was the time that, like you said, national TV. Michele Smith was back in town. It was time to go put the hammer down, and they did. And they made themselves, kind of a contender. Everybody looks at them like, oh, that's Oklahoma State team. Yeah, they had Sam Shaw do a bat flip against the Oregon team that's kind of down on its luck, because of Mike White left, and he took, Miranda Ellis with them. They have Shaylin O'Leary. And then you're like, well, they did the same thing against Texas. That's the same people you're mentioning. So this team proved to itself that it is a team that can make it to the World Series if all things are going right. It just has to have that consistency. And so hopefully we're still looking here. It's the middle of the sixth.
Middle of the sixth is what I'm seeing, and still just 1-1 after they loaded the bases.
Yeah.
Interesting thing, that was 13 minutes ago. I hope that doesn't mean that there's a big inning happening for UT-Arlington that they're just not waiting till the end of it to tweet about. Hopefully I'm wrong.
I hope not. So that's if that ends up happening, it's a team that obviously is 500. You're down there in their house. It's dangerous. They have beat Baylor twice this year. They beat Arkansas once. And it's a team that beat you last year. And it's a team that I think last year after that game was the most angry I've seen Coach Gajewski. So hopefully that's not what happens. That take away some of the momentum. We need to have a 4-0 week this week, like I said before on the radio. So that'll be nice if they end up pulling this one out and then going off and win the series against Kansas this weekend at home.
Yeah, there's so hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully, but we'll get to talking about Kansas and that stuff coming up right after this Michele Smith interview that you had. Give them one thing that they should listen for, other than like her anger about the Olympics.
Yeah, and I did not know this was her first time back, and she talked about same trees that was there when she was playing, and and a bit about we talked before the podcast how Oklahoma State at the time, she came from New Jersey. It was at the time she came here, they were the premier program in the state under Coach Sandy Fisher, and everybody thinks that OU's the one, and not back then, and everybody forgets about that now. So I think that was cool to hear some of that history and to hear her talk about what Coach Gajewski's doing to bring this program back to that level. And overall, it's just cool to hear her talk about the expansion of this game and the impact that she has on it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Here is Michele Smith with Jordan Bishop at Cowgirl Stadium on the Cowgirl Coverage podcast.
What's it been like here these past couple of days coming back here and just memories coming back for you?
Well, it's great. I mean, I remember the very first time I stepped on this field and looking at these trees and thinking, I'm going to hit those trees. And some things don't change, but a lot has. It's great to see the stadium and just, the support of the program and just where they're at with equipment and uniforms, all those great things that, how the women's sports in general have really improved over the last 20, 25 years.
I know you're going to be humble about this, but it's the stadium, all this is here partly because of what you and your classes have done and laid the foundation for this program.
Yeah, we were fortunate. We had a lot of great athletes come in. My freshman year, I think we had eight new players, a couple of transfers, but I think 6 freshmen, and ended up being All-Americans, just a really good group of women that came in together and worked hard together. And back then our practices were very long, and we were lucky if we made it back for our dinners and stuff because we spent so much time on the field. But it was an honor to come here and play and really put the Oklahoma State program on the map. We were the dominant program in Oklahoma for many years, and I think a lot, sometimes people forget that with the success that Oklahoma's had the last, 15 years or so. So it's nice to see that the program is getting back in the winning ways and the support, from the fans and the university.
Yeah, I was reading Scott Wright's story, and you spoke to why you wanted to come to Stillwater, reminds you of home.
Yes.
Just what was kind of about the program at that time when you came here? What was the program like? And obviously the this wasn't the same field, like I mentioned, but the same trees and everything. What did you like about this program coming here your first time?
Well, for me, I'd only been pitching for 3 years. I didn't, my first competitive year of pitching was my sophomore year in high school. So I knew I needed to come to a program that had a pitching coach. And Oklahoma State at the time had 2 pitching coaches, and Margaret Rebinar and Sandy Fisher. So they helped me tremendously. That was a big part of it. But a lot of it was my comfort zone, too. I grew up in the country in New Jersey, and I'm, country at heart. And so when I went to other universities that back in the day that supported softball, some of them were located in big cities, and that's not what I wanted. I really wanted that community feel, and Oklahoma State had everything I was really looking for, and it was a natural fit for me.
And you've been a big part of the growth of this game in terms of exposure and just back. Was there much TV games back then, or it was even the World Series broadcast? What was it like back then?
I think only the championship game was broadcast, and then in summer ball when I played. There were some of our championship games, but no, there was not a lot of softball on television, and the little bit that was done well, but it was like if you weren't the best of the best, you weren't getting on television. So I think the '96 Olympics obviously changed a lot of that, and then the sport as it's become more competitive. And the sport, we're adaptive. We change if we need to change something, we change it, and the balls are lively, the bats are lively, the fences are short, so it makes it a little more high scoring. When I played. And when I played in international ball, when you're throwing the ball 70, 73 miles an hour from 40 feet, there's not a lot of offense. So I think, increasing the ability for the hitters to have a chance against the pitchers has made a big difference to the game. And people like to see, balls leave the yard. They like to see some scoring. And so I think all those things together have made a difference to really improve the sport. But now it's definitely TV has driven it.
What do you think about obviously being part of ESPN and what you guys have done for the sport of softball? It's a TV sport. It's short, around 2 hours. It's lively, like you mentioned, a lot of entertainment value. What do you think the growth is going to be over the next 5 years?
Well, I think as a sport, we have to be cognizant of pace of play, and that's why a lot of times we'll go to conventions and talk with the coaches and say, look, we can't drag it out. We cannot fit in a 2 or 3 hour, 2.5 to 3 hour window. We need to be very close to that 2 hour window to be TV friendly and fan friendly. It's hard to keep anyone's attention for more than 2 hours nowadays. So if the sport continues to stay quick, continues to stay on pace, and pace of play remains relevant, then I think that the sport continues to grow, and the athletes of, now you're seeing 6'2" athletes, 6'4" athletes choose to play softball instead of basketball or volleyball. So now you've got quality athletes playing. The training is a lot different. You always have to keep pushing the bar for your athletes to be quicker, faster, stronger at a younger age, So it's been a lot of different things. But yeah, television has been a huge part of it, and we have great crew. ESPN has a great group of individuals that love the sport and really work hard behind the scenes to make sure that every broadcast, everything that's put on is done well.
And just obviously we've seen the growth of it domestically, but internationally, they got put back in the Olympics, and then they're going to take it back out from France, and just. How frustrating is that? It's obviously growing. It's it's demand, yet the international folks don't see it that way.
It is extremely frustrating, and that's part of the issues with the IOC and trying to convince other countries that aren't as passionate about the sport as we are, that there's a need for it. There's a lot of young girls around the world, not just in the United States, that play this sport, and so we have at an international level, we need to continue to grow the sport in Europe. That's a big part of it. And make those European teams stronger so that those IOC members want to keep it in the Olympics. So that is an unfortunate aspect that we won't be in Paris, but then right around the corner we'll be in LA, and hopefully, obviously, the sport will be well received on the American program.
Just looking back at your playing career, how has it helped you overall? I mean, obviously being a part of the sport, but to become a broadcaster, obviously the ins and outs. How has your time helped you whenever you're up there in the box?
Well, I look at it from a lot of different perspectives. I played long enough that I was like a playing coach, so I think about it from a coach's perspective. I think about an athlete's perspective, a training perspective, an opponent's perspective. I mean, when you play as long as I did, you run out of things, so you start to look at all these different dimensions: opposing coach, opposing player. How would I pick myself apart? How would I attack myself? So then you know what you need to work on as an elite athlete, and then you work on your fitness. I started cycling a lot, so I always pushed my body to that super that nth degree, and lifting as much as I could, my fitness level, making sure that I was a very fit pitcher, big part of it. So, I think that you dissect every part of the game, and I try to do that as a broadcaster. I try to look at all those things. I try to look at the defense, the pitches, the pitch selection from the hitter and the pitcher. There's so many different things going on in your head. Sometimes it's easy to miss even though the little things, because you're so in-depth looking at, positioning, who's up the middle, what's the batter doing, all those different things. It can be confusing at times. You get off air, you feel like you've run a marathon mentally. But it's a lot of fun.
After you got done playing college level, back then there wasn't very many places to go internationally or the Olympics. How overall do you feel that, pro softball is growing a little bit in terms of these players now, what they can do after college?
Well, I think that obviously the most financially supportive league is over in Japan because it's corporate sponsored. So it's a little different formula that they use over there where the athletes are employees for the companies or the industries, and then they play for their corporate teams versus in the U.S. we rely on the gate and it's or TV rights and stuff like that. And it's hard still for women's sports, not just softball, but just a lot of women's sports. So, I think we have some work to do on educating the public to continue to find it enjoyable to watch women's professional team sports, not just, at the collegiate level. So, we have a lot of work to do, but for the athletes, I think that there's the opportunity to play in the U.S. and the NPF and over in Japan, but you have to be at that elite level, so that's a big part of it as well.
What does it mean to you to obviously be a spokesman for this game, and not only softball, but on the 7 Innings podcast, but also other women's sports, and get to, kind of say what's really going on in these sports and try to spread it, around and say these sports need to be watched?
Well, that's a big part of it, is getting women to support women, and getting moms who have daughters to support women, We have a lot of men and their boys that go out and watch men's professional sports. Well, we need to do the same thing for women's professional sports. So a lot of it is just, raising the awareness, trying to educate people on the game, and the more educated they are, the more they love the game, the more they're going to want to follow the game, and, create opportunities for more young girls, So it's just kind of keeps growing it, And I was talking to Miranda Ellis last night a little bit, and then she tweeted out to me some pictures when she was at my holiday camp, when she was 11 years old. But now she's the future. Back then she looked up to me, and she was the future of the game. Now she's, the elite player, and the future of the game was looking up to her. So it's a continual cycle that as women we need to continue to inspire the next, but also promote the sport.
And lastly, Michelle, just looking back to this series and this game, how have you seen this program, especially under Coach Gajewski, grow? And what do you see from your alma mater in terms of getting back into being a team that might make it back to Oklahoma City, hopefully year in and year out?
Yeah, well, it's a support system. It's a belief system. It's a culture. You hear a lot of successful teams talk about that, you want young athletes that want to come and be a part of it. And that's what Kenny Gajewski is doing, is building a culture here that works hard, that attracts great people, great athletes, but great people. Most successful programs have really invested good people that are talented with what they do, and that's going to be one of the keys. And you can't let that slip, and it slipped for a little bit, and so it's taken a little bit of time to get the program back, but it's going in the right direction, and I love to see that. I love to see that the team is competing again, and that's a big part of it. You can't just show up on the field. You have to compete. You have to have that will to win. You want to, you're going to give everything on every pitch. You can't let up for one pitch in this game, because if you do, it slips away. And I think that's kind of been a little bit of the inconsistency with some of the losses this year with this year's team. But I think if they can, play with the intensity they played last night, every pitch for the rest of the season, they're going to be a tough team to beat.
Welcome back into the Cowgirl Coverage podcast. Jordan King, Jordan Bishop here to finish off the podcast. Good interview there, Jordan. I like your interviewing skills. Very good.
Thanks. I don't think I was afraid. That's why I was like, oh man, I'm gonna be giving, because I didn't know which one it was. Like, it says it's the number on my recorder, but when you pull it up on the computer, it's all these different numbers. I'm like, oh man, giving Jordan all these interviews, you just pulled up a bulk of them to go through. I'm like, I hope he doesn't think I sound like a dummy in these interviews, but I appreciate it. I hope you're not just blowing smoke, but
well, if I am, that's too bad. I'm just kidding. But anyways, good interview there. As I said, appreciate you being able to do that. And looks like we have a UTA lead. Is that correct?
Yeah, UTA took lead after a leadoff walk and a pair of hits in the 6th. So 2-1 heading the 7th. Cowgirls need something. Let me see here. I don't remember. I should have pulled up stat broadcast to see who's next in the lineup in the order.
Yeah, I didn't even see a stat broadcast online that they
Okay.
tweeted out, so I don't know if they have one. But yeah, no. Hopefully they get something here in the bottom of, or top of the 7th, and at least extend the game. I mean, at least extend it, and hopefully able to somehow pull this out. Talking about what's upcoming, though, win, lose, midweek games. We know that you want to beat a team like this, but this is a team that's played well, gotten some of the rose up and bit a couple teams that you wouldn't expect them to, and played really well over the course of the season. Win or lose, big weekend here against a team that is probably better or more qualified than you thought they were going to be in Kansas. Mm-hmm. Everyone kind of expected this to be a bottom dweller down there with Iowa State. Well, it turns out, they win a couple games against Baylor.
Yeah.
So they won that series. They're 2-1 in the conference. They end up 4th in the conference right now. I guess I can pull up the conference standings as long as I'm talking about it. OU is in first place still.
Had a non-conference series last week, which they dominated against Utah.
Yeah, so no problems for them. They're still 3-0. Texas 5-2. They had that midweek game against Baylor, so an extra game, which is why they're in second. Oklahoma State's in third, 4-2. Kansas, as I said, in fourth place, 2-1. Texas Tech still ahead of Oklahoma State somehow in the coaches poll. 2-4 in the conference. Baylor 2-5. Iowa State 1-5. So there's how that shakes out. Baylor, Kansas, a couple teams that maybe you would have thought preseason would be switched around.
Yeah. And Kansas, I tell you, I think that was up in Kansas, and that's why they had to delay it. And they play a doubleheader on Saturday or Sunday. But Kansas is a tough place to play, and the Cowgirls figured that out last year. That's why I'm pretty wary of them. That's why I said this is a trap week. We see that now with them down in Arlington right now, but it's trap week because Kansas is a team that they play with no fear. Coach Richard Wigman used to be the head coach here at OSU. He's up there as an assistant. And it's a team that they have no fear. And they had a pitcher, I think, last year go, then they went the extra innings, and she threw like 180 pitches. And then she pitched the next day. And that's dedication. And so I think obviously you want to sweep this week because of RPI. You don't want to drop below the 16 line. But also, you need to win this for momentum, and like we said, win every series from now on. If you don't win it, you got to sweep it. Hopefully, knock OU off the top of the mountain.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. So again, I wanted to pull up the RPI right after this because I think this is an interesting thing to look at. So I highlighted some teams here. The teams in gray, the light gray, are teams you've already played in the top 25 or top 30 RPI. By the way, just outside of the top 30, teams like Oregon and there's one other team you play in the non-conference that's just outside the top 30 as far as RPI.
Arizona State.
Arizona State, that was probably it. I believe that's who I'm thinking of. Arizona State and Oregon, pardon me. So these are top 30, though. You're talking about 9 teams that you're going to play. The 2 in orange, obviously, foes that you're going to play in Big 12 play, talking about Texas Tech and OU. But outside of Texas, you look at that Tulsa. That's kind of going to shock some people, I think. 19th in the RPI. This is a team that's quality. You had to go play there. You lose 3-0. Not a good loss by any means. No loss is good. But it's not a bad loss. Not like UT-Arlington would potentially be.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's not like a crippling loss on your season. It's not that bad. It's not like losing to Central Arkansas if you're the baseball team, in my opinion. But at Notre Dame, Kentucky, Tulsa, Ole Miss, there's some really good teams, some top 5 teams that you're going to play in the RPI. You knew Oklahoma was going to be there. You figured LSU would be knocking on that door. Arizona, a team that you lost to as well. But you see in the RPI, a lot of teams that you've lost to in the top of the RPI, but a lot of teams you've competed with. LSU, you competed with them. Arizona, not as much. Texas, you won that series. Ole Miss, they got you once. Okay, you had a bad weekend. So there's a lot of teams here that you played really well against, and I guess that's what I wanted to highlight pulling up the RPI.
And the thing that with Tulsa, too, that I like is that you have a chance to play them again, I think, coming up the next week or the week after. And if you get them, I know you've had your demons with Tulsa. You can't beat them. I don't know the reason why. Well, I'd like to know why. But if you get that win here at home, that's the RPI win for you. And especially if you lose this game, I think UTA is around the 90s or so in the RPI. That would even it out if you got a win against Tulsa. the midweek, along with a series sweep against Kansas in between. So that's the bright side. But the thing is, though, do you want to stay the RPI? Everybody talks about coaches poll, the USA poll. Yeah, it's all nice. The RPI is down to if you're going to get a regional or not. And so right now, the Cowgirls are in a good spot.
Yep, no doubt about it. And you're going to have some chances, like I said, Texas Tech, Oklahoma. You can take care of you take care of Tulsa potentially. You're going to have them coming back here. You're going to have opportunities to continue to raise this RPI, and maybe you get some slippage ahead of you too. So that's all. And you look, Florida, Bama, Tennessee, Ole Miss, LSU, Florida State. These are all teams. Well, Florida State, I guess, is the ACC, but a lot of SEC teams in there that you would think would help beat up on each other, and maybe, if not keep them there, maybe touch them, bump them down a touch, that maybe you could make some ground up on some of them too. So that'll be interesting to see how that all works out from a regional standpoint. Kansas coming in here, though, it's a series that you should win. And when I felt like when Gajewski said, you got to win some series, you got to sweep some series if you want to finish top 2 in this conference. I think the Kansas series is one that he feels at home is one you got to sweep.
Yeah, I think Kansas and Iowa State are definitely ones you want to sweep. I know Iowa State's on the road, but you got to feel that you have to sweep those 2 teams. Texas Tech, you hope to sweep them. But again, they are a team that is playing a lot better this year. So a series win probably wouldn't hurt. But you have to win all these series. And so far you're doing a good job. You're 1-for-1. But this weekend coming in, you don't want to have a letdown. I know last week was big. It was, like we mentioned all the reasons before, top 15 matchup, national TV, big crowd. You don't want it to wind down against Kansas and then drop a series, because then that would be devastating.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So Kansas comes in here this weekend. Big series, big Big 12 series as well. So I don't think we're going to stick around to see how they finish off this. There's been a little bit of a break.
Oh, here we go.
Final.
And they lost.
So I guess instant reaction, if you had to say a couple words on this, Jordan, UT-Arlington, not a game you want to lose. But it's not the end of the world, right?
No. And it's a 2-1 loss. I think, to me, I like to see the stats to see how many hits they had, because you don't want it to be returned to form on your offense. Because we saw 2 weeks ago the Ole Miss trip, how that hurt them, not having an offense, and then carry over to Tulsa, only having the one hit, which was from Sam Chow. Tonight, the only run, Sam Chow, solo shot. So if the offense was getting the hits, you just weren't bringing runs home, then I guess you could be okay with that if that's the silver lining. But you don't want to do like you did last year. Last year they had a huge problem with leaving runners on base. Like we mentioned earlier with Taylor Lynch hitting that against Wichita State, runners on base. I think they had multiple times bases loaded, they couldn't get runners home. If that happens again, you don't want to start going in the same vein. Shake this off. Forget about it. Go to Kansas, or have Kansas come to you. Get a sweep. Don't let this carry over into the rest of your weekend.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing here. You're going to have some of these where you end up having some situations where you have a letdown, right? You're going to have some of those situations. I think you bring up a huge point there. Don't let it fester into something more. So hopefully they don't. It's a bad. I'm going to say it's a bad loss for this team. This is a team that wants to be in Oklahoma City. UT-Arlington ain't going to be in Oklahoma City. I'll tell you that much. So it's a bad loss. It's not a season-defining. It's not a season-ending loss or a world-ending loss. I think that's important to stress as well. So, sucks. Is it bad? Absolutely. Not what you wanted, but it's a tough game. You called it a trap game earlier this week, and turned out Jordan Bishop correct again.
And one thing I wanted to get in before we got off here, and it's the same thing with availability. It was my last question to ask Coach Gajewski, because he mentioned before at the beginning of the year that she was the forgotten pitcher in the whole rotation. Sammy Clakley, transferred from UTA a couple years ago. She got pitcher of the week this week for the conference, and I think he said before Wichita State last week he saw a look in her eye, and she's been pitching well, and just overall she battles through so many things. I mean, obviously being diagnosed with diabetes in high school, having to deal with that. There's a great story by Jake Dershweiler on the website from that today, but it's a testament to her work ethic that she never got down. She's not a strikeout pitcher, she'll tell you that, but she went and held Texas to scoreless game on on Saturday. So good for her. Hopefully it helps out them in the future. And Sam Shaw and Sam Clakley, a good 1-2 duo.
No doubt about it. And by the way, this is Sam Clakley, who we thought was the midweek pitcher earlier this year. She's turned herself into a bona fide weekend reliable pitcher too. So you get weekend pitchers, and then there's people you can rely on the weekend. She's one of those. So and Sam Shaw is too, by the way. But great for her. And by the way, let's mention this real quick. Throwing out the first pitch on Friday. This is kind of cool too.
John Smith, he's coming out. We saw it today. And him and Coach G go way back. I'm pretty sure they were buddies the first year they were here. The great, everybody remembers the great Matt versus Bat over there at what's that called? Homecoming Hoops. They wrestled because Coach had I think they had to get 50 hit by pitches, and they did. And so if they got that, then he go wrestle John Smith, who's a multiple time Olympian. Now he's going to be out there. He was out there last week at the Texas game. He'll be there throwing out the first pitch, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. So speaking of gold medalists, thank you to Michele Smith joining you earlier this week and allowing us to use this on the Cowgirl Coverage podcast. Really appreciate that from her. And just a good podcast here once again, Jordan.
Yeah.
Episode 16 in the books. Thanks again to Michele Smith. Thanks to Jordan Bishop. Thanks to all the Cowgirl softball players that let us cover the team, and Coach Gajewski, and they do a great job over there, and looking forward to this weekend against Kansas. So hopefully they can get this thing turned back around. If you're just joining us and haven't seen, although this is going to be posted afterwards, I don't know why I'm pretending like it's a live update, but they lost to UT-Arlington. Not ideal. So, Jordan, been a pleasure. Episode 16 in the books. It's the Cowgirl Coverage podcast on the Triple Play Sports Podcast Network.